I mean, you had Tim Waltz, who's a huge jerk, you know, running around on stage with a Tesla stock price, where the stock price had gone in half, and he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do! What a creep! What a jerk! Like who derives joy from that?
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw.
Yeah. See, this is the world's smallest violin.
I can't. Yeah. What else?
This is a boy who went on Joe Rogan and said that the worst thing for the human race was empathy, or words to that effect. And now now because he's got so many self-imposed problems of his own making, demanding empathy because people are making fun of him. The boy just rage quit. He got roasted alive trying to play like some MMORPG where the other players were like just completely annihilated. I mean, like he put the character with no stats whatsoever and got completely destroyed in the video game. And people are saying like, you have no friends and you'll die alone, which is true. You ruin the country like you ruined all your marriages. And Muskrat rage quitting.
Oh my god! Oh god! Yeah, man. I just had to play
like 35,000 feet in the air too. So he's like,
yeah, man. That guy. Yeah. He's sad
all
because
the money in the world
smart.
will not make people. In fact, more people hate him now than before he bought Twitter.
Yeah. When he bought Twitter, I hated him when he bought it because ever since then, Twitter just it might be.
Years ago when he tried in a cave rescue in Thailand where a bunch of kids got trapped in a cave on some field trip, and he was trying to into and the efforts to try and make himself look like a hero, and he got shut down, and somebody else ended up rescuing the children from the cave, and in retaliation for being human, he falsely accused a guy of being a pedo.
Oh yeah, I remember that story. Yeah, man. That's who he is.
Yeah.
That's who Elon is right there. That what you just said, man.
Yeah. So Pharrell's with the anti-trans bullshit is just that's just the tip of the iceberg with this boy. I mean, he's got so many problems mentally. It's not even funny.
Yeah, and I hate that people say he's autistic. I know autistic people, and they do not act like that.
He's not autistic. He's just a psychopath.
Yeah, exactly.
He just used that. Psychopath.
Yeah, he used it as an excuse, obviously. So, guys, what's up? Welcome to the A&M podcast. I'm Andre. He's Left Indy. We come to you on the ATP Network. You can catch the ATP Network on all major platforms, except for Rockfin at the moment. And also, too, on the bottom of your ticker, follow our official Twitter account at ATP Network 247. And also, too, if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, like the video. It's free and don't cost you a motherfucking thing. So Mike, we got a lot to talk about, man. Let's start with Scott. What's up with Scott, man?
Well, you know what? I was watching this exchange. Let me call up the thread here. That's the latest one, but this was Sonny Thang or Sonny Tang. I'm not sure what's his last name, but he's a Vietnamese pundit who's based in Asia, obviously. I don't know if he's living in Vietnam or somewhere else, but lately he's been taking Scott Ritter to school Now, if you're not familiar with Scott Ritter, he was a former U.S. weapons inspector in charge of overseeing Iraq's dismantling of its WMD program. And then he tried to blow the whistle in the run-up to the invasion and occupation of Iraq in 2003, was railroaded on what could be trumped up or false charges of importuning a minor on a Yahoo chat forum, although he says he was chatting with someone who presented as an adult who play as a minor, and but that was actually like the second incident where he was accused of that, and I tend to be 50-50 as to whether or not I think he's actually guilty of that, because usually when the prosecution withholds in a case, that doesn't look good for the prosecution. But being a right winger and considering his position on LGBTQ people, you just know that they do like to project a lot of their own deviations onto their victims. So anyway, I stopped following him a few weeks ago just because he got to be too insufferable. He starts lecturing people about reality, and this is with regards to Iran's nuclear program. Now, if you're just crawling out from under a rock, or you just don't pay attention to politics, back during the Obama regime, Iran was being accused of having a nuclear weapons program, although the U.S. intelligence agencies long ago, as early as 2007, I believe, they produced a white paper saying no, Iran gave up its nuclear weapons program in 2003. The Ayatollahs, the religious leaders who are opposed to weapons, and Obama, during his tenure in the Oval Office, during his second term, negotiated the JCPOA, which was a deal by which Iran would limit its nuclear program, limit its uranium enrichment program. And when Trump came into office in 2017, he tore up that agreement and walked away from it. Continued to follow it, but then during Trump's first term, he assassinated a high-ranking Iranian general, and of course, over the last couple of years, since the start of the genocide in Gaza carried out by Israel, the Ansar Allah group over in Yemen, also known as the Houthis, had been running a blockade of the Red Sea shipping, trying to stop weapons from going into Israel to be used on Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. And Iran has long been accused of being the sponsor of the Houthis, basically, accusing Iran of being a state sponsor of terrorism. Well, to make a long story short, over the last year or so, it's been escalating to the point where Iran was being attacked by Israel with targeted strikes, assassinations, and last year Iran launched a couple of missile salvos in two separate incidents against Israel, penetrating the so-called Iron Dome, which it turns out it's a paper dome, but basically overwhelming Israel's defenses. And Iran only used a fraction of its arsenal. So there's been talk lately that Iran, if it does decide to retract the fatwa from developing nuclear weapons, it could actually have them ready, install them in its warheads with weeks, if not days. So anyway, Caligula Trump, when he got back into office this year, has been threatening Iran if it doesn't comply with orders to disarm and leave itself defenseless. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So Scott Ritter is basically going off the rails, lecturing Iran about reality, and has been handing Scott Ritter his ass relentlessly, pointing out stuff that pretty much everyone but Ritter seems And is that when the United States, which is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but routinely violates it and tore up the JCPOA, that pretty much removed all incentive for Iran to do away with its own nuclear program. So, common sense says Israel and the United States are making threats of destroying Iran. Iran would be stupid not to get nukes at this point. Because if you look at North Korea developed the nuclear bomb. Nobody thinks even once about trying to nuke North Korea, because they know that the nuclear response from North Korea would
catastrophic.
Yeah. So So I think the general consensus is that Iran actually should develop weapons as against attack the United States. So Sonny here has been lecturing Scott about actual reality. All right. So Ritter was he participated in the processes that saw the United States reduce its nuclear arsenal from over 30,000 weapons to 1,550 today. Well, that is actually a lie. As Sonny points out, the United States still maintains a nuclear arsenal of over 5,000 nuclear warheads. And that's just like the ballistic stuff designed to go after Russia. All right. So 1,550, he says, refers only to deployed strategic warheads under START treaty arsenal. What Ritter omits is that the United States still holds over 5,000 nuclear total and those awaiting dismantlement. It's not disarmament, stockpiling with better public relations. So let's not pretend you've led some moral crusade towards peace. And as for Israel's nuclear weapons, the denial is laughable. The whole world knows what Dimona is. You can feign ignorance, but Mordecai Vanunu didn't spend 18 years in solitary confinement for smuggling lunch recipes. The United States didn't give Israel nuclear, simply looked the other way while it built them, protected it, armed it, and blocked every international attack available, including weapons inspections. But Israel is not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It doesn't have a declared nuclear arsenal, even though the whole world knows that it does actually have nuclear weapons.
Right.
But Scott says he's part of negotiations that are now underway. What negotiations are these? Basically ordering Iran to surrender and allow itself to be destroyed. And he's calling it diplomacy. It's like, no. No, because diplomacy at a barrel of a gun is not diplomacy, it's coercion. A situation where, and you can look up Sonny and read his threads with Scott Ritter. But Sonny is basically pointing out the hypocrisy inherent in Ritter's unhinged argument, and even Jamarl Thomas, formerly of Sputnik Radio, was remarking on his YouTube that Ritter has gone to the point where he is now basically disinviting himself from any program that might actually challenge him on anything he's been saying lately. So, Jamarl invited him on his show to kind of, defend his position, and he basically said, nope, I'm limiting who I'm talking to, which basically is conservative speak for I'm too scared and unable to defend my position, so I'm just going to limit myself to an echo chamber.
Yeah. But I have a question, though. Like,
but when you lose,
go
people
ahead.
like Jamarl Thomas and Mark Sloboda, that's bad.
Right. But I have a question for you. Like we said this off air. Do you think that Scott Ritter, like he's getting older and he's been in the Marines, do you think that like really breaking his brain? Well, you say he possibly had COVID too.
He has confirmed that he had COVID. He dismisses what it's not. It causes brain damage. I mean, that's not even up for debate. That there are numerous studies showing that COVID does cause damage to the frontal lobe of the brain, which leads to early onset dementia. And of course, with brain damage comes behavioral change, heightened aggression, loss of emotional control. Uh, an ex-Marine, and you've already had emotional control trained out of you. Yeah. So I suspect that Scott has had one too many COVID, because he's just gone off the rails lately, and his reaction to the destruction of Syria.
Yeah.
After the collapse of the Assad government, basically blaming the Palestinians. Well, first of all, the Palestinians don't have anything to do with Syria.
Exactly.
They're undergoing a genocide. They can't intervene in Syria.
But Gaza don't have his own military structure. They don't have a government. So how they can be responsible for Syria? Yeah.
Well,
I get
the general attitude that Ritter and others have had is that because the Assad government, one of the few Middle Eastern countries to act as against Israeli expansion, removing Assad, even if you don't like him, is just stupid and ultimately destructive to Palestinian freedom. Now, I don't know the extent to which the government of Bashar al-Assad, formerly of Syria, was actually doing much, if anything, to help the Palestinians. I mean, Syria has had its own problems. The United States and Israel have been trying to overthrow it for well over a decade, and they finally, late last year. And so now Syria is under the control of an al-Qaeda affiliate and the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. So right now, ISIS and the al-Qaeda affiliate, they're creatures of the United States and Israel. So they're basically helping with regards to keeping the region destabilized. Now, there have been some people nominally on the left who have cheered the fall of the Assad regime, which, don't get me wrong, I'm no fan of Assad. From everything I've read about him, he was not a good guy before the civil war in Syria. His own people despised him, but he was also the only one who was really fighting back against aggression from the United States and Israel. And with the aid of Russia in fighting off al-Qaeda and ISIS, it looked as though, things were stable, but apparently Assad's wife got sick. He started devoting less time to running Syria and more time to taking care of her, which, okay, great, shows you're a devoted husband.
Right.
I'm not blaming him there, but, it came at the expense of neglecting his duties as the president of Syria. And on top of that, who helped win the civil war, them from positions.
Yeah.
Not too smart.
Yeah. You're right, man.
This and the Iran really has Ritter marbles, which, considering he didn't have all that many to begin with, being a former Marine.
Yeah.
I don't mean to diss the general. I do tolerate the other branches of the military, but I actively despise the Marine Corps. Marine I've ever met, to form mine, it messed them up to the point where they were no longer human beings, but just complete and utter psychopaths.
Yeah. My uncle was in the Marines, and he already Ritter, he already had marbles. He lost his marbles, but now he's a complete psychopath. I hate the guy, really. I really hate him. I don't want to be
Marines are not known for their intelligence. There's a reason why they're heads, is because they're transparent and transparently empty.
Yeah. It seemed like, before we get to the terrorist part, but it seemed like to me, I guess they trained them to be heartless, heartless psychopath.
I mean that's
That's
it exactly. I mean the military in general
yeah.
is supposed to go to a heartless killing machine, because that's what happens when you have to prepare for a war. You cannot have soldiers who have too much empathy, because their job is to kill the enemy. All right, that's I'm not
God,
I'm not using that to make excuses or to condemn, stating the reality. That is what the United States government trains its soldiers to do. But with the United States Marine Corps, they are more inclined to take the mentally deranged into their ranks,
yeah.
and turn people who are already emotionally unstable, uh, lack of empathy, and turn them into utter psychopaths and serial murderers.
Yeah, that's true, man. Yeah. Not only they train them to kill the enemy, they also train them to guard oil fields for the big oil.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, it's wild. So man, what's going on with these tariffs, man? Trump and these fucking
Well,
terrorists. My God.
that's the thing, isn't it? Because
Oh
yeah,
Lordy, man.
this is USA Today. So China decided to retaliate against Trump's terms with tariffs of its own on U.S. goods, and basically it's halting imports. Saying on top of the 34% tariffs he slapped on China, he decided to add another 50%. Okay, so he started off with 20% tariffs, then he added another 14% or whatever, no, another 34%. I'm sorry, to give it to like 54% tariffs on Chinese goods entering the United States. So China retaliated with tariffs on U.S. goods, and Trump is saying, okay, we're going to go to 104% tariff. So after midnight, they're going to go into effect. So, Beijing refuses to withdraw its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports. Of course, they're saying it's a mistake for China to retaliate. No, it's not, actually, because
No. Yeah.
the thing about China, it actually, bloody freaking hell. So I'm trying to close up these pop-ups, and
Yeah.
so see, the thing is, China doesn't actually import all that much from the United States, and what it does import is easily replaced from other sources, like say Russia, India, other BRICS nations. So
Right.
These tariffs are really only hurting the consumer, but Trump is really all he knows how to do is slap tariffs, because he can't destroy China militarily. So he's trying to hurt them economically, assuming that China needs the U.S. more than the U.S. needs China, and the boy is incapable of reading the room.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: stocks keep falling after the markets are basically in free fall right now. Lost about points on Friday, another 1,200 or so yesterday. Wall Street ended largely, and this is on NBCnews.com. It says Wall Street ended largely lower Monday after a wild trading day, as Caligula Trump escalated his trade war with aggressive tariffs that have rocked the global elite. Because it's not just China that he decided to levy tariffs against; it's trying to browbeat other countries into shifting their manufacturing over to the United States, which, first of all, even if these countries have the ability to do that, they don't have the inclination.
Right. I mean, why would they do that when they have other countries to,
So S&P closed down 0.2%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.9%, or 350 points. The tech-heavy NASDAQ ended the day up by 1%, led by a rally in chipmaker NVIDIA, which finished 3.5% higher, but of course, after rather dramatic falls. So the U.S. markets spent the day on a volatile seesaw. The S&P opened the day down 4%, falling below 20% from its most recent high. I mean, we're in bear market territory.
Yeah.
Then a widely circulated but false headline that Trump was considering a 90-day tariffs pause skyrocketing. The White House then proceeded to debunk the news, and it's like, okay, if you're trying to prevent panic in the markets, the last thing you want to do is tell the markets, no, we're sticking with these, because then the markets are like, oh shit,
you fucked.
Yeah. So
yeah,
there's a lot of chaos going on right here. It's on Al Jazeera.com. U.S. stock market sinks lower after wild swings of Trump's tariff plans. As Trump threatens additional 50% tariff on China, as Beijing pledges to fight trade salvos to the end. So U.S., and this is from today, U.S. stocks have closed mostly lower after a day of wild swings as investors scrambled to make sense of the United States dictator Caligula Trump's tariff plan. The benchmark S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial fell 0.23% and 0.91% respectively, racking up a third consecutive day of losses. The tech-heavy NASDAQ slightly up, rising just under 0.01%. The dip followed a day of volatility with unfounded reports that Trump was considering a 90-day pause to his tariffs. Briefly, 500 up more than 7%, but then he said, nope, the tariffs are in place, and then they fell right back down. Muskrat is watching his own shares fall. So I'm just going to read from my own thread from today, because it's pretty clear that Trump really has no idea what the fuck he's doing. He has no idea how to make good on his promises to eliminate the U.S. trade deficit, which is what he's doing with all the tariffs. And so he can't eliminate the trade deficit because we don't make anything here anymore.
No.
So, and then, of course, the dollar is a reserve currency for much of the Western world. So we can't not run a trade deficit. The only way we can get a trade surplus is if the U.S. dollar is no longer the world reserve currency and we start producing more than we export. Or basically export more than we import. But we're not going to import more than we're exporting. Or vice versa. I mean, I'm sorry. We're not going to export more than we're importing because we don't make anything anymore. So we can't restore U.S. manufacturing because there's no incentive. View supremacy over the entire planet. He has no idea how to do any of this. So he's basically flailing about trying anything and everything he hopes will stick. But he obviously has not thought anything through. Like the rest of the Washington neoconservative establishment. He believes in this fantasy of America as a dispensable nation without which the whole world would just collapse into a new dark. So, that being the case, Trump obviously thinks China and Iran and other enemies of the U.S. last 36 years in stasis, not adapting to meet the needs and conditions of changing times, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like it's actually the United States has been stagnating and in decline while the rest of the world has been moving. So, the truth is that neither Russia shut out as they have been by the global Northwest have sat still over the last 30 years. They're forced to build and rely on their own manufacturing prowess. They did make mistakes, but, they learned from those and, they're also learning through trial and error to see what works. So they're on a footing with regards to their manufacturing capacity. So, they're exporting more than they're importing, which is good. But at the same time, China and Russia, as part of BRICS, they've been building up an alliance of global Southeast nations to counter the geopolitical machinations of the global Northwest, headed by the United States and its lackeys in the UK and France and Germany. So, the BRICS system has its own functioning economy and trade system, that can weather sanctions and tariffs levied against them by the United States. So that they basically decoupled from the U.S. dollar.
Right.
If your economy doesn't rely on the U.S. dollar for no amount of sanctions or tariffs is going to affect it negatively.
Yeah.
Not for any real length of time. So,
right.
So basically these tariffs are too little and too, they're not going to have any positive impact on the United States' economic and geopolitical decline. Trump refuses to take any action to repatriate U.S. manufacturing and other trade agreements were drawn specifically so that U.S. corporations could move operations overseas and avoid having to pay American laborers and follow American labor laws.
Yeah.
And because Trump is a neoconservative, like all the rest, they don't believe, neoconservatives infamously do not believe in taking any action that would infringe on the rights of businesses to do as they please without consequence. So, in order to repatriate U.S. manufacturing and bring it back over here, that would require the very government meddling that the neoconservatives are dead set against under any circumstance. So, the idea that you're going to force manufacturing to come back to the United States relies on being able to bully other nations into dismantling their own manufacturing, bringing them over here, which they don't have the ability or the inclination to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the only has anything geopolitically is the imposition of punitive tariffs to try and crush the economies of nations that don't obey U.S. edicts. And again, because of the BRICS system, it's not working, and it's not going to work. And
no.
So, the result of all this deliberate economic turmoil is crashing the U.S. economy. Just we're not even 2.5 months into Trump's second term. Congress and the Supreme Court are basically just letting him run roughshod over the Constitution as he swings his wrecking ball. So he really came back to the Oval Office with no real plan, and no plan to make his agenda work. So as always, he's just making policy up on the fly, and he's not thinking ahead about the ramifications of his actions. So at this point, he's not even playing political checkers, chess. He's just swinging a sledgehammer blind, hoping that he hits something hard enough to take it down, and obviously he's missing. So his boss, Elon Musk, in the meantime, he's got a bunch of self-imposed problems of his own. He's tanked his company's stocks. I mean, if Tesla drops, another 200 points, basically if it drops below $200, I think, then his investors and shares will call a meeting basically to take his companies away from him.
Yep.
Because they're going to want to. He recently sold Twitter to a shell company to try and keep it out of the investors' hands, because he borrowed $44 billion to buy Twitter, and he used Tesla stocks. So if he loses control of Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, and his other companies like Neuralink, if he loses control of those, then his investors will basically take Twitter away from him, because that those stocks were his collateral, and they want their money back.
Yeah.
So they could force him to sell Twitter. So he making these shell moves to try and keep things under his control, but he just had a recall of over 40 Tesla for various problems. Basically, the trucks are falling apart because they're poorly constructed.
How did that shit pass?
Basically, they're held together with glue and popsicle sticks. And of course, in addition to tanking his company's stocks, but he's taking a wrecking ball through the Department of Government Inefficiency, taking a slash and burn approach to government programs that don't funnel public money into his private bank accounts. So, but there's simply no way to reduce government deficit by cutting social programs alone. and not just social programs, but education, scientific and medical research, renewable energy development, and so on. All those together account for only a tiny fraction of the federal budget. We're talking the operating budget. I'm not. Social Security and Medicare have their own funds that Muskrat is trying to raid through privatization, but
a coup.
But all of this, out of all the discretionary spending that the United States does, the programs that they're trying to eliminate are only a tiny fraction of the total discretionary budget. Most of that is gobbled up by the Pentagon, which Trump is saying, hey, we're going to increase the annual budget not to a full trillion. So since taxing the wealthy is forbidden here in the United States, his boss Muskrat are hoping to take revenue by imposing further taxes on an already overburdened and underpaid peasantry, us, through tariffs. Basically what the tariffs are, they're a tax on us to try and pay for the tax cuts that Muskrat and Trump want for themselves and their class. So, that's basically the reason for the tariff policy. But it can't work because you can't bleed what's already been bled dry.
Yeah.
It's trying to get water out of a rock, and it's not going to happen. So obviously, as a result, the U.S. economy is in a state of rapid collapse. The rabble are understandably outraged because, Trump voters were sold on the lie that their lives would actually be improved by, targeting minorities and taking a wrecking ball to the federal government. But, of course, they were lied to because obviously they are being affected. I mean, if you look at the town halls that Republicans are running away from, I mean, people like Laura Loomer, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, or whatever her name is, they're going to these town halls and getting their asses handed to them. And as a result, they're going to Trump and saying, look, there has to be some early process to this so that we're not causing all this chaos because these are our candidates, and we're taking the heat from it because Republicans still fear their base, and rightly so, because their base does hold them accountable. Okay, it's not like the Democrats where the base fears. No, in the Republicans' case, the party fears the base because they know there's political consequences. So, I think for the dumbass duo, their corporate overlord are realizing rather quickly that they backed the wrong horses last year during the election, and that it might have been better for market stability to let the brain-dead Kamala Harris occupy the Oval Office as figurehead while the real bosses, namely the ones who are running Biden's regime in his place, carry out the will of the corporate overlords on Wall Street. I mean, I think the question now is, how do they rid themselves of the monsters they installed without too much more disruption to the system? Because I don't think how to, and they know they don't to, so that they're in this kind of catch-22 situation where they don't want to further disrupt anything, but they're going to have to in order to resolve this. In fact, Sabby Sabs on her show had this recording of J.D. Vance basically bitching about Muskrat and his methods, because Trump and Muskrat are both the kinds of rich morons who like to take a wrecking ball to shit and just completely demolish everything so they can build something that's more to their liking. But the problem with that is that it's too disruptive. Whereas, neocons like Vance, Rubio, people like that, they prefer a more orderly dismantling of the system.
Yeah.
Because if you if you take a frog and toss it into the fire, it's going to leap out. But if you put it into a pot of water and slowly raise the temperature, it'll start cooking gradually, and by the time it realizes it's in danger, it's too late. Well, that's the approach preferred by neoconservatives, traditional neocons. But with Trump, they're like their creature Milei down in Argentina. That they want to take a chainsaw to everything right away.
Yeah.
And they don't care about the short-term or the long-term consequences as long as they get what they want, which is their idea of a libertarian free market dystopia.
Yeah.
Where corporations are the only government in place.
Yeah.
And the peasants have no choice but to obey or die, basically.
Yeah. 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 See, they are, you could say they are, hope I ain't getting this wrong. They are reactive instead of proactive. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they are reactive. I mean, like I said, and I'm posting the links, by the way, into the private chat so you can post them. But yeah, I mean, neocons, generally speaking, are reactive to the extent that they plan anything at all. Their tendency is to double down on the same failed policies that got them into trouble in the first place, because they're unwilling to take any responsibility for their own actions or admit error, because they see admitting error as a sign of weakness. Because in neoconservative ideology, any sign of weakness is an invitation to attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
And rather
Trying to
than
be tough
and
guys.
rather than risk appearing weak, they decide, oh, we're just going to be weak by doubling down on the same mistakes and not learning any lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you know what Albert Einstein said is said to have uttered about the definition of insanity? I don't think that's so much the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I think that's the definition of rank stupidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because you're doing something that you know doesn't work, but your pride won't let you admit it.
Yeah. Like, that's why Trump, remember, like you said, Trump considered like pausing the tariffs because he read the room, kind of like, yeah, this gonna fuck up the the stock market.
And the thing is, though, it's like neoconservatives are infamous for engaging in magical thinking.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I got a video for you to see, and I want you to give your thoughts on it. When I saw it, I gave it a side eye.
About China. And let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor costs. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason is because of the skill, the quantity of skill in one location, and the type of skill it is. Like, the products we do require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US you could have a meeting of tooling engineers and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here.
Yeah, I never thought I would agree with Tim Cook on anything, but he's right. Yeah, because China didn't stay a cost country. You know, the original intent behind NAFTA and other trade agreements was that they export labor to other countries where they could pay rock bottom wages to virtual slaves. But China did not stay that country. They used those trade deals to build up their own manufacturing base and invest in money in education to train their workforce in fields of industry that now have that basically the leading nation in the planet on the planet for tech innovation. So gutting the Department of Education to dismantle public education across the country.
Yeah.
Suicidal, because a labor force that is uneducated and lacks the skills to make the things that would jumpstart the American economy, it's not possible because you've got an education. In order to restore American manufacturing, you need an education system that trains people. I mean, I went to West Technical High School. It closed down in 1995, but I went to West Technical High School. In its heyday, it was one of the better technical schools for people who wanted to learn a skilled trade, whether it was automotive, woodworking, metalworking, you name it. That's what a technical school excelled at. Now, by the time I went there, most of that gutted. But those technical schools, and that was a high school, mind you.
Yeah,
You no longer have that where you can come away with the kind of technical skills, not even for college, because we don't invest money into that. So people come out of high school and college without the skills needed to go into anything but maybe law and medicine. But even with medicine, we're outpaced.
Yeah, obviously, because China,
I
for example,
mean,
has
when China opened up after the first couple of years of COVID, I mean, they repurposed HIV drugs to treat people who had gotten COVID. Now they still have problems with regards to that, but they're coming up with effective treatments and vaccines that are outpacing ours. They're not out of the woods. I think they should still be doing mitigation. In my opinion, you're not going to end the pandemic until we have not just universal masking with N95 respirators or better, but in tandem with that, far UVC lights to help inactivate viruses in the air, improved ventilation, improved air filtration in all indoor spaces, and in outdoor spaces where people gather in large numbers. If you can do that, you can vastly reduce the spread of viruses and other airborne pathogens, and therefore truly bring about an end to the pandemic, because then you're giving the vaccines time to do their jobs, because you're no longer spreading a virus that is known to mutate more rapidly than I change my underwear.
That's true. That's true. And you remember, like I think the first year of COVID happened, we damn near like litigated the flu because we
there was a
half-ass
strain of
masks.
flu that we drove to extinction because during that flu season we were masking and not
Yeah,
going
masking.
out,
Yeah.
so it wasn't able to spread. A virus that can't spread dies with the toast.
Yeah.
So we could have stopped this years ago, but instead we rushed back to normal and decided we were going to pretend away the pandemic. Viruses don't give a shit what you believe or what your politics are.
Yeah.
They just invade your cells, use them to replicate, destroying those cells in the process, and then move on to the next host. They don't even need to keep you alive any longer than necessary to complete its life cycle.
Exactly.
But you think you're going to pretend away a pandemic? No.
No.
They didn't pretend it away during Spanish flu. That actually never ended either. We just learned to die with it.
Yeah.
Until we came up with vaccines.
Yeah. 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 It's like I be the only one in my job masking, man. Like, it's still like people like look at me crazy. Like, you still
I don't go anywhere
years?
without an N95. I mean, I had a collapsed lung in 2020 as a result of viral pneumonia in my right lung that affected the nerves in that area.
Yeah.
And caused extreme nerve pain. That's what got me sent to the hospital. But when they got me to the ER, I had a collapsed lung, a blood clot in the upper portion, and then I was in the hospital for 5 days, and it took me 3 months on blood thinners and about as long to reinflate my lung.
Oh, wow.
That's not a pleasant experience. I'm not willing to do a repeat of that.
Exactly.
I was just able to get my asthma inhalers refilled after quite a while because I got a temporary extension of my Medicaid benefits.
Okay. Yeah.
But right now I'm waiting on word from X-ray results that I had yesterday for my upper right arm. Because I was having pain in my upper arm a few weeks ago that lasted for a while. And then eventually the pain resolved itself. But now if I'm lying on either my left or right side, I'll start getting tingling in the arm going down to my hand. So that kind of suggests a nerve thing, according to the doctor at the free clinic. So after the free clinic helped me get a 30-day extension on my Medicaid, I was able to schedule an X-ray, and they said if they don't find anything on the X-ray, then they'll move to the MRI, basically to try and rule out anything more serious. But they think it might be nerve related, so I did get a refill on my Anton and baclofen. So I'm taking those as needed, but that is not cheap. If I didn't have Medicaid, I wouldn't be able to go to the doctor to get it treated.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And of course, Trump and Muskrat want to get rid of Medicaid and Medicare.
Yeah.
They just put Dr. Oz in charge of Medicare and Medicaid.
Oh, shit.
That boy wants to destroy those two programs.
Yeah.
Then he got Bobby Kennedy in charge of Health and Human Services, and we've got measles again, and Kennedy is going to these funerals, and he's not even mentioning vaccination. He's talking about vitamin A, like it's some kind of cure-all for measles. No, for measles.
You don't know that.
In fact, measles actually destroys your immune memory by completely. It's basically resetting your immune system to the point where it has no. You lose all your antibodies to anything you've been previously vaccinated against or exposed to. So, if you had vaccinations against smallpox and you get measles, you're vulnerable again. If you have vaccinations against hepatitis and you get measles, you're vulnerable again. COVID, flu, pneumonia, RSV, norovirus, anything that you've previously had or been inoculated against, measles wipes all that out.
Wow.
And that's what's spreading out of control right now in Texas and other parts of the country. And Kennedy is like, oh, just take vitamin A and get fresh air and sunshine and exercise. And it's like only unhealthy people are dying of COVID and others. Bullshit.
What?
Because COVID damages the brain, it damages the heart, depletes the immune system, causes diabetes, causes gastrointestinal issues that apparently killed Glenn Greenwald's husband.
Yeah.
So, and also apparently messes up the mitochondria in your cells. Now, if you don't know what mitochondria is, if you've been living under a rock, a mitochondria is this little bacterial organism that hundreds of millions of years ago, back when we were still single-celled organisms in the ocean, entered into those cells and took up residence there instead of being devoured, and basically became the little batteries of our cells. So when you eat something or take a drink of something other than water, any calories that you take in go to feed the mitochondria. And in return, the mitochondria generate the energy that your cells need to reproduce.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
So what does COVID do to mitochondria? Fucks it up. Your mitochondria are no longer able to generate as much energy.
Yep.
Which might explain the chronic fatigue that people get after COVID.
The long COVID? Yep. That's true.
So you've got this novel virus that the establishment wants to claim as a bioweapon cooked up in a Chinese laboratory and either released or escaped, that is simultaneously no worse than the common cold, and use as an excuse to inject us with vaccines, which they claim are the real threat to our health, and try to inject microchips or make us magnetic or whatever batshit insane conspiracy fantasy they want to come up with. But you get to see why these people are fucking stupid. But we're seeing the rapid collapse of the United States empire in real time, and we're only 2.5 months into Trump's second term.
Shit. Yeah. Shit's gonna hit the fan quickly. Believe it or not, Mike. I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
the worst part is they're going to end up rehabilitating the Democrats who may get back control of the House of Representatives, if not the Senate.
Yeah.
Not that they'll actually do anything with that, but
Nah, they ain't gonna do shit. We know that.
but this is why I say, if you're going to vote third party, because you're not going to get any changes voting for Republicans or Democrats. But you also need to take a two-tiered approach, which is not only vote in elections and for third-party and independent candidates, but you also need to be on the streets in your N95 respirators and your dark glasses, because it's not just the respirators that hide your face, it's the dark sunglasses, because facial recognition can do more with your upper part of your face than it can with the lower part.
That's true.
Because you'd be surprised at how many people the lower part of their face looks like anyone else's. But when you have like the upper part of the face, that's what's more unique. That's what we recognize more than the lower part. So you need to be wearing both eye covers and respirators, so you're not getting or spreading respiratory viruses.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one last topic. What's your thoughts on the hands-off protests over this weekend?
From what I've been seeing on Twitter, from I think Liz was saying that the protests that she's been to, that seems more performative bullshit. They have people out there defending NATO, saying hands off NATO. No. Fuck NATO.
I seen
That's how you know this is an AstroTurf campaign. Okay, it's like the morons wearing the pussy hats and the pink ribbons and whatnot, trying to and pretending to protest Brett Kavanaugh's appointment to the Supreme Court, even though they supported a literal child molester, Joe Biden, for the presidency just a couple years later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actual video footage captured on C-SPAN of Joe Biden feeling up women and little girls.
Yeah.
But no, it's only Trump and Kavanaugh and whoever else that they worried about. No, sorry, you don't believe in Me Too if you're going to let one set of sexual predators slide just because they nominally play for your team. Yeah. So miss me with that bullshit, okay?
Oh shit, yeah, man. I seen a Ukraine flag at there too, man. I'm like, this shit is bullshit.
That is the most bullshit aspect of it. It's like you're supporting a literal Nazi country. I mean, somebody had a sign calling Trump and Russia fascists and Nazis, and they've got a hammer and sickle within the sign, trying to link Nazis to communism. The Nazis despise communists and communism.
Yeah.
The whole reason Hitler went to war against the Soviet Union was to eradicate it.
Yeah. Exactly.
But you're going to conflate Nazis with communists? No. They hated communists and communism. They still do.
Yeah.
And you're going to bat for literal Banderite Nazis in Ukraine, God, because your hatred of Russia and Putin blinds you to reality and rational thought. I mean, I don't like Putin either, but I don't obsess with him the way that people do. Okay, I don't. People call me a Russian bot or whatever. It's like no, I'm a historian first of all. So I take an attitude of, okay,
balls and strikes.
Actions have consequences. If you do this, knowing the history of what happened between the Soviet Union and Nazi Ukraine during World War II, Russia's reaction to that is going to be rather predictable and obvious.
Yeah, right.
So you should not make the same mistakes that you did 80 years ago that lost you that war. The thing you need to do is to war against Russia, because you're going to lose. I mean, Putin 20 years ago, 25 years ago was like, look, just you want to solve the security problem? Let Russia join NATO. He was rejected.
Mhm.
because they wanted to balkanize Russia, not have it join NATO. So so my opposition to the war against Russia is that history should show, you're stupid to wage war. I mean, even being against war generally, okay, because I am anti-war. But as a historian, I look at what happened in the past, apply the lessons from that past to the present, and try to make educated guesses about what the likely reaction will be and what the consequences will be to actions taken in the present. And so far we've seen that bear out because Russia has been slowly grinding down Ukraine. Uh, I, I seriously doubt that Ukraine will last much longer because Zelensky made himself an enemy of Trump and Vance, so they want nothing to do with him. And as long as he remains in charge of Ukraine, I think they're going to say, look, you're on your own. You can surrender now and throw yourself on Putin's mercy, or take your chances. But because we want to destroy China, we consider China to be the greater threat to our hegemony, or however you pronounce it. And we're going to focus our efforts on destroying China, and we can't afford to keep wasting time, money, and resources propping you losers up. Because we also have to defend Israel's genocide of Palestinians and funnel money and weapons over there too.
Yeah.
So that's basically, I think that's basically it for Ukraine. I mean, I'm surprised it actually lasted this long, but I kind of underestimated the Russian strategy of attrition that it's been engaging in. Because a couple years ago at this time, Prigozhin, who was the head of the Wagner Group, he basically was the one who waged a protracted battle in Bakhmut, which is this major strategic town in Ukraine that basically drew the Ukrainian forces in, trying to salvage that, and ultimately lost. And so Russia and its military brass were like, we shouldn't be focusing so much on Bakhmut. We want a war of attrition, and fighting this hard in Bakhmut is just wasting men and resources. So it kind of left it up to the Wagner Group to take the brunt of that, and it kind of broke Prigozhin's brain, which led to his coup attempt that resulted in his exile and later his probable assassination. But the original policy was to engage in a war of attrition, to slowly grind down Ukraine's ability to replace its soldiers and equipment. And now I think with the new regime trying to shift its focus to China, I think what's going to end up happening now is Ukraine is going to end up collapsing maybe this year. Now, I can't say when. I'm only guessing. But I don't know how much longer it can hold out. Because the anti-China neocons are now in charge, and they place a higher priority on destroying China than they do on destroying Russia. So that they're trying to divert efforts and resources to that goal, and that they can't do it while supporting Ukraine and Israel. So they're making their choices, and I think right now our ability to even take on China is in question because of the chaos that Trump is wreaking in the stock market with the tariff policy.
Yeah.
Because not only did China hit back with its own tariffs, but it's also increased restrictions on what raw materials can be exported through third parties to the United States.
Damn.
And these are raw materials that the U.S. needs for chip manufacturing, like computer chips, military hardware. So if we lose access to those raw materials, and we will,
price is gonna go.
Waging war against China is a pipe dream.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, man. Um, all right, Mike. Any last thoughts, man? Like this has been a banger podcast so far.
Yeah, well, my thoughts are I need to lower my cholesterol and my blood sugar because yeah, my blood test came back on. I got blood tests on Friday and got the results the next day, and looks like I'm still within the green range, but it's like the high end of
Okay.
the green range,
Oh yeah. Okay.
borderline going into the yellow. So
Yeah.
I got to try and get that down. So cut
Yeah.
back on the sweet, increase my
Yeah. That check.
intake
Yeah.
of fresh fruits and vegetables, and cut down on the fatty meat take. So we're
Yeah.
talking grilled food and not fried.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to, learn myself last year. That's why you see me in the gym busting my ass. Yeah. The
Yeah, I
doctor
also need
said,
to start exercising too, but more than that,
yeah,
I need to get a job quickly because my unemployment benefits are almost exhausted.
yeah. Oh yeah. Before we go, yeah, man. Like, let's promote your fundraiser because uh, you know, like, let me share my screen real quick. Um, yeah, guys, support Mike. Um, um, he's trying to he wants to educate kids, people overseas to excuse me, Mike, to teach English. You teach English overseas to kids. My bad. um, you know, share it. Let me see. Here we go. Here we go. There we go. Um, yeah. So, if you're
Yeah, as you
watching
can
this
see,
on the
my last
podcast,
donations were 2 months ago. So after those initial two, I got another one via Cash App, but that was back in February.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah,
But even if you
y'all,
just donate $1,
yeah,
that'll help.
yeah, guys, anything helps. I need to start promoting you more, um, because man, like, I really should be paying you to do this. Like, you sacrificing your time to, contribute to the network and stuff. So yeah, and I'm gonna slide you. I supposed to slide you a few dollars in there, but I forgot. So after we get off, I'm gonna slide you a few dollars in there, and
Thanks, man. But yeah, don't take too much off of your finances because
oh
a
no,
lot of
I'm
people are
good.
hurting, and it gets to the point where you know mutual aid can't really be done if people are just donating to each other and uh, unlimited incomes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're basically being left on our own to fend for ourselves and try and raise money by begging each other. When we should just be seizing the means of production and taking back our government and taxing the shit out of the rich.
yeah, yeah. We
They
did
actually
that.
produce anything.
Yeah,
They just
so
take.
yeah, yeah. And you know what else is fucked up though too? This woman, she said her son school is teaching them about billionaires, saying billionaires are the ones that make this country run. I laughed so hard when she said
Yeah,
that.
oh
I'm
my
like,
god, the
but
sheer stupidity on display. It's like billionaires have never made a single solitary contribution to anything. That's why they're billionaires, because all they do is take. The people they employ are the ones who actually produce shit. The people who work in the factories, the people who design shit,
yeah,
the people who do research and development,
yep,
they're the ones who actually produce shit.
yeah,
We
yeah,
peasants who work the front lines on manufacturing, on service sector, we're the ones who actually produce shit.
yeah,
Farmers
yeah,
produce.
yeah, exactly. So, so yeah. All right,
Universities and
guys.
high schools produce, because
Yeah,
they produce an educated workforce,
yeah, and
or
also
they're
too,
supposed to anyway. But
yeah,
yeah, I could go into a whole other thing on DEI. In fact, I was just watching an episode of Bad Faith. Brianna Joy Gray was talking with Norm Finkelstein, who was dropping a lot of N bombs, which Brianna just did not push back against, which surprised me. But
Yeah.
but he was ranting and raving against DEI programs, and it's a shame that nobody's teaching Shakespeare anymore. And it's like, I like Shakespeare too. Don't get me wrong, but you're not citing any of the stuff that you say is contributing to the decline of education. It's like, I don't know what works he says are being pushed instead of Shakespeare or whatever that we should be learning. But yeah, just listening to people rant and rave about DEI is so that not the gutting of public education is a problem.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense.
It really is, man. We need to talk about that on the next episode, definitely. Yeah, that'll be an interesting topic. All right, guys, that wraps up episode 10 of the A&M podcast. Be sure to follow us on every platform, the ATP network, and also too, we have a podcast. So just search up the A&M podcast, and you'll see us on there. And I'm going to upload more episodes, so stay tuned for that. So, all right, Mike, man. Another banker episode. I appreciate it. See you next week.
Hey, glad to take part. Good night and good luck.
You too, man.